Hey everybody, Coldon here with another VOX Immortalis commentary guide. This video is for Heroic Ultraxion in 10-man, and this video is very similar to normal mechanically. It's just everything is bumped up enough that it's a very severe DPS and gear check sort of fight. So the main changes are that when Hour of Twilight is cast, it must be soaked by 2 people total rather than 1, or he'll kill the keepers and wipe the raid. When Fading Light is cast on the current tank, it's also cast on 2 random raid members rather than 1. And remember, this cannot target healers, so it's always going to be on DPS players. And then finally, when a player soaks Hour of Twilight, this will give them a 2-minute debuff that will increase their susceptibility to future Hour of Twilight damage a great deal. Basically, if you have the debuff and you soak another Hour of Twilight, you will die instantly. So, because the debuff lasts 2 minutes, and because Hour of Twilight is cast every 45 seconds, and because 2 people have to soak every Hour of Twilight, this means you need to use rotation of basically 6 people throughout the fight to deal with Hour of Twilight casts. So how you set up this rotation is really the key to this encounter and the main challenge. It's almost a fight that requires your tactics to occur before you actually pull the boss, primarily. Because once you pull the boss, you should know what you're doing, and then it's just about basic execution and pressing your button at the right time and doing DPS and healing. So I'll talk about the main overall tactics for Hour of Twilight rotation, the popular classes and specs, and then actually mention what we do in our setup here. This will obviously depend a lot on your raid makeup and cooldowns and all that. So the main thing is if you have access to basically damage immunities or severe reductions, you should use those classes in the rotation. So the strongest ones by far are Rogue with Cloak of Shadows, a Shadow Priest with Dispersion, a Hunter with Deterrence, and a Fire Mage with Cauterize. Obviously, in the Mage's case, you're not getting rid of the damage, so they need to be healed afterward. But otherwise, those are very, very strong and should be in a rotation if you have access to them. That said, from that point on, you should just order based on the total health of the player and their self-survival cooldowns, in order of strength, basically, and then determine what outside cooldowns you have and need to keep them alive. So our rotation, our Hour of Twilight rotation, is the first one is our Warrior Tank and our DPS Death Knight. And in this case, our Warrior Tank is spec'd into 2 points of Safeguard. And because he gets the, tank cooldown debuff on this fight, or buff, I should say, he can intervene every time Hour of Twilight is cast on one person, and it lasts long enough that he can cast it and then get out of Hour of Twilight himself safely. So this reduces the damage on them by an extra 30%. So he intervenes the DPS Death Knight. That plus AMS keeps him alive on the first one. Our second set is our other tank, a Death Knight and a Enhancement Shaman. He uses Shamanistic Rage and gets Hand of Sacrifice from our Holy Paladin, and also intervene again from the Warrior. And finally, our third set is our Priest, Shadow Priest with Dispersion, and our Holy Paladin, who has the Clift Divine Protection. And again, intervene is used on the Paladin in that case. So intervene is extremely strong with Safeguard talent for this fight for us, and I'd highly recommend it if you're using a Warrior tank. Speaking of tanking, there is some pretty big discrepancy in terms of survivability for the tank classes on this fight, just because of the mechanics. Because there's a lot of tank swapping very quickly, Druids are by far the worst tank on this fight, just because they don't have active mitigation that they can really use. So, when they want to block, they're definitely not going to all the time. Conversely, Death Knights are definitely the strongest because they can do active mitigation and they have such short cooldowns with the buff. And then Warriors and Paladins are kind of between. I would say Warriors are stronger because of shield block, basically having 100% uptime. Otherwise, kind of whatever you got available. Just you have to make do. In terms of healing, paladins are definitely the strongest, and then I think druids are second. I haven't really seen enough logs to say that, but I'm pretty sure they were at least second ranked last I looked. So luckily, we were using a druid and a paladin. And in terms of how you heal, you can do the buffs how you want, but as a druid, I'm picking up red in our case, and this is because since red increases your healing by 100%, it applies that 100% bonus to Swift Mend, and then that Swift Mended efflorescent tick that occurs is then applied again a second time. So you double dip in the 100% healing. So basically you're doing 400% healing on efflorescence ticks that you should be doing. It's really, really strong. So generally speaking, red is strongest for a druid. But red is also really strong for like a paladin and a lot of other classes. So you'll have to kind of figure out what's best for you. However, in our case, green is not that great, but the blue buff is really good for paladin as well, because they can just chain cast Holy Radiance once they get blue. Never have to worry about mana and go to town on that. So that's really strong. Otherwise, like I said, this fight is really about your DPS and your gear. Once you hit the 5-minute mark, the fight is completely about survival and just lasting long enough to finish the boss. Because at 4 minutes, you're getting unstable casts every 2 seconds, and at 5 minutes, it's every 1 second. So it's just doubling the DPS to the raid instantly. And this happens 10 seconds after you gain Time Loop. So when you see Time Loop on everyone, you know you just have a few seconds before things just go crazy. So use all your raid cooldowns that you have to survive once that 5-minute mark happens. I should also mention that we actually lust at the end here, even though we're experimenting Wind to Lust. And after our experimentation, even though we got the kill here, I think it's actually better to lust at the beginning of the fight, because you're not getting out of Fading Twilight, and also because when you lust, if someone is faded into the other phase, they won't get the buff. So it can be kind of dangerous to wait, because you might have some DPS that's fading and not getting Bloodlust. Anyway, so you can see we're just trying to barely hang on, and we just barely get the kill. It was very, very close. But just like any fight, that's sort of a gear check. Strategically, we have it down, so we just have to increase our gear every week a little bit, and it should become easier and easier. So, yeah, that's Heroic Ultraxion. Of course, any questions or comments are welcome, and good luck. Thanks for watching.